Okay, hey everybody, it's Sunshine. I'm here with Zam today, and we are going to talk about light language. Um, interesting topic. It hasn't been totally completely foreign to me, but there are some things that I definitely misunderstood about it, and also some things that I'm starting to become more aware of in regards to it. And how it kind of fits into the sensory perception that I talk about. So I want to thank Zamara for being here with me today and inviting me last week to watch uh, a live stream that she sat in on. The channel there is Light Language. Is that her channel, Light Language?
It's Languages of Light.
Yeah, and it was really. So yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me as well. I was going to say that, but I didn't want to cut you off.
Yeah, I really appreciated you inviting me to listen in on that, because it really seems to be kind of inspiring me at the moment to, I guess, in a validation kind of way, in a just, I feel very excited. I've always felt so. Here's how I was introduced to it. There's somebody that I know that I had met a couple of years online, who I did a couple of radio shows with, and I really would actually love to do more radio shows with her and with you and with some other people that I had met back then. But anyway, Beth Lightbright, I think she used to go by Celtic Lightbright. Anyway, some of you know who I'm talking about. So she does light language, and watching her videos, I just always felt like what she was saying, the tonality of it, just was very peaceful to me, and that's how I feel when I listen to it. I feel it feels very kind of like, I guess, in a way, maybe that I kind of have a knowing about it in some kind of way, because there's a familiarity with it. So how about you? I found out some interesting things about you and about how you kind of got into it. Tell me a little bit about that, Sam.
Oh, goodness. So this had to have been 2 years ago. I would say right, maybe 2017. So yeah, that's 2 years ago now. Holy crap. And this was when I guess my spiritual seeking had kind of reached its peak. And I was looking, beyond religious and occult and more into, I guess, the extraterrestrial side of my spirituality, that part of me that's related to the cosmos and stars. And I had followed two channels. One was the Languages of Light channel, and one was another guy, Denny K, that I used to be really, really close with. And he would speak this language, and it sounded very much like you were saying, like a Native American kind of thing. But at the time, I was going through quite a bit of emotional distress, and I just found that what he was talking about, along with the you know light language aspects of it, was very comforting.
So kind of a familiarity with you as well.
Yeah.
Right on.
Right. And I could remember even hearing some other channels that I followed, and it just felt familiar. There was almost like a buzzing sensation in my chest when I would listen to it at first. And so then one night I was actually laying in bed, and I was listening to, because people do light language transmissions all the time. And I was listening to one, and I had this whole experience, you know what I mean, where the words or what was being said through the channeler started to fade away, and it became this sort of like visionary experience where
Oh,
all of a
interesting.
sudden I was having a conversation with this being or group of beings, you know, but it was more than just, you know, hearing a transmission and hearing what they were saying. I was actually seeing them like physically, like an open-eyed hallucination almost. Um,
Wow.
and that was one of my first contact experiences. So after that, it started really coming to me in writing. Um,
That was the other thing that I had learned about you after talking to you more about this was that you were starting to get like symbol downloads, right?
right. Well, and I realized I kind of always had been getting them. But this
Interesting.
was the first time that it was like, you know, sometimes when you write it out, it almost looks like, you know, you're writing Chinese or some kind of really complex, you know, script like that. And so it's like, whereas before I had drawn a lot of images that I could, you know, look back and see what I was kind of describing was something more than just a picture or just a, you know, doodling. Um, 2 years ago when I was writing it, it was actually coming out like a language, you know, like there was a specific way of writing and making marks and all of that. And I can't quite, you know, I would say like transcribe it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the weird thing about it is that um, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be like a language like we have languages here.
Right.
Um, I'm not
So I
really
totally
sure
get what
how
you're
that
saying
works.
about that. Let's talk about that for a second because what I'm starting to so what's happened to me over the past couple of weeks and watching people who are talking about this particular topic and this actual verbal language that they are also talking about the symbols, the written kind of language, and this is what kind of keyed me into okay, well, I had never really considered language being other than it's like I feel like duh. I never really considered language as being something other than verbal, even though I know this somewhere in my mind, right? Like that there is a there's symbols and sign language where people are using their hands. So I started thinking about like, well, so I talk a lot about sensory awareness and sensory perception, and that it's something so much more than what we've been programmed in our compartmentalized thinking brain as to what it is that is we're capable of in our sensory awareness in this experience. And so for me, one of the so we know that light is light and shadow. It is perception. Light is perception, and language is basically vibration. So I was thinking about like with sign language and symbols and like this is all vibrational energy as well. I mean, the signs and symbols are everywhere, and it is vibrational energy that somehow we subconsciously tap into and kind of carry this construct through this mathematical kind of, you know, vibration of symbols and, you know, and then sigils can be used in magic and then, you know, I think about like schematics and energy and like it's all kind of really tied in together as far as this is the actual kind of language and so um so light yeah light basically light language for me is like perceptual vibration It's just a different way of saying the same thing. And there's different ways to tap into our our sensory perception via vibration. It made me aware that the visual sensory perception that I have that's different from other people, okay, is basically being able to see a different state of vibration where, so in a way, it's another form of light language, is what kind of occurred to me. And then I kind of was going on beyond that as far as like, okay, well, how would I express that? How would I express, because it's so difficult to describe, sounds half crazy. I think about the light language people have had to have people calling them crazy for so long, people who have been able to tap into that verbal different whatever. And I don't even know if they're necessarily tapping into other beings, or who knows, who really knows, but whatever, it's their way of becoming aware on another whole level.
Right, I agree. And I actually found some of the writings I have here, which isn't a whole lot. I think I tucked a lot of them away, mostly for fear of that, right?
Yeah.
That when a boyfriend or a friend would come over, and like if they just so happen to go through my sketchbooks, they'd be like, "What the fuck?" This is crazy. But I was interested to find out, right? And I've actually heard my mom talk about this quite a few times, that my grandma has this lady, this Christian lady, her name's like Joyce Myers or something.
Oh yeah, I know of Joyce Myers. Yeah.
Okay, and my
Yeah.
mom was like, "Oh, it kind of reminds me of whenever I've been at her conventions or I've heard her speak, and she starts speaking in tongues." And I was
Yes.
like, "Wait, what is that?"
Yeah.
And so if you look it up,
Yes.
there's actually a term called glossolalia. Glossolalia is a phenomenon in which people speak in languages unknown to them. Um, one definition used by linguists is the fluid vocalizing of speech-like syllables that lack any readily comprehended meaning. And in a lot of religious practices, this is considered to be divine languages, which are
Yes.
obviously unknown to the speaker. So
Yes.
I was really
But there's also a
shocked.
whole nother group that will say that that's somehow demonic, or something. It's funny. Demonizing these things is a real it's just like, don't do tarot, don't do magic, don't do witchcraft, in the religion, how they've demonized these things so to keep people afraid of them. Or even Sirius's, some would say that schizophrenics are actually people who have the ability to see in other dimensional realities and communicate in other dimensional realities, but they've given it this label of craziness, and that's not to say that their schizophrenia it isn't, but I think if anything, the reason it gets so kind of warped out was because of that belief system that's been ingrained in us, that, religion says that if you can hear voices, you're listening to demons, and who is it that can prophecy and speak in tongues? Like, what makes one person like on the good side of that, and the other person on the evil side of that? Or I don't know, who gets to pick and choose all that?
Interesting. Yeah. So, and that's the one thing where when it comes to like religion, I think, especially here in the United States, like our shit's really been watered down. Like our concept of like how all these religions have worked is really skewed, because like we're talking about this and I'm just going off of what I'm seeing on Wikipedia here, and it's like, oh, actually there's a whole branch of Christianity that
Mhm.
emphasizes this Holy
Yeah, the
Spirit and
Pentecostals,
the
right?
gifts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah, and it's their
so
thing, and it's like even the summer solstice is like around where that the calendar that they use for all of that is pretty tied in together too. And so then you go into paganism, like it's really interesting when you start breaking down religion, how much is actually in the whole just spirit realm of things.
right, and how
Mhm.
much has been like it almost reminds me of what's that movie that is it's not the Da Vinci Code, it's like Angels and Demons or something,
Yeah,
where they find out, one sect is trying to basically say, no, only one guy can do this, when the reality is that, all of us are able to like partake in that divine path.
right.
Um, so anyway, back to light language and stuff. Um,
So
yeah,
for
I
you,
think
so
that's
this
one
was a
of the things
couple of
that I'm
years ago when you were like really tapped into that. So kind of, I guess, what has your experience been over the past couple of years? Like, have you tried staying in tune to it, trying to cultivate it, or what's happened over the past couple of years?
um so at first, yeah, I was really into it. And I was trying to stay into it. Like it was getting to the point where I was actually starting to be able to speak it and like hearing it in my head. And I'm not sure when exactly it just became sort of an excessive thing for me.
Oh, okay.
Before I knew it, all I wanted to do was sit on YouTube and listen to light language transmissions and
Mm,
try and decode light language and do all of these things with it that um, I just don't think I can do right now. You know what I mean? Like I can't make logical sense of this language I'm writing and speaking, and that I'm able to like perceive other people speaking these languages and kind of get a sense of what they're talking about. At least I think so. Like, and so then I just kind of started to back off from it just a little bit. And so since then, the writing has never really gone away, but I'm not able to really speak, or I guess I don't, you know, give vocal transmissions of it now. And it was like seeing a lot of the different channels that are like, oh, we're preaching from so and so, this group, and we're in this language, and it's this kind of being. And I guess for me, that made me want to say, okay, well, if all of these people are claiming that they're speaking from Arcturus, let me compare, I guess, the styles of the languages they're speaking, and then it wouldn't all sound exactly the same. Of course, it's not going to. And then I would be like, oh, well, that's kind of weird. How can you guys all be talking from the same place, but you sound like you're coming from different parts of the galaxy? And that's when I realized, like, it may or may not be, from Arcturus. That part of it, actually, I don't think even matters. I think that's more
Yeah, I
of a
agree.
human thing to do, to say,
Yeah.
like, oh, this is coming from this group or that group, because I mean,
Yeah, I would totally
Have
agree
been
with you
all
on
colors
that.
and sizes and shapes.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you on that, but I don't think that there's anything wrong with someone wanting to necessarily believe that's where it's coming from, because I think in some way that's how it makes more sense to them, um, and is more acceptable to them in what it is that's happening with them, that they're able to create. Because here's the thing, I really like the one guy on there who was on there last week. I don't know if he was there this week as well, who was there last week, who his language sounded completely different from everybody else's, but it was more of a clicking kind of sound. um, but he makes it very clear that he created this language himself in order to be able to get downloads. Okay, basically. I don't know if he says from any certain place or whatever, but that right there is creator energy. It is a state of childlike wonderment. And they were talking about it today too, as far as if you are unable to, like, you're connecting to this light language, but there's something holding you back. What could be holding you back? And that would actually be your own self judgment of where you're not able to be free enough to just jibber jabber, okay, like kids do. And that state of childlike wonderment, our innocence, our to tap into our knowing and our intuitive gifts, like these are just we're breaking down those barriers in whatever way that it takes to do that. I think if somebody can still create in any way, is breaking down those barriers of self, of our own compartmentalized thinking, of our own programming, of to get back to the innocence of our childlike wonderment as creators. Um, so you can tie that into, um, somebody who's artistic, they create in that way, and whatever it is that they're creating in that way. So if they're a musician, we all know that there's sound vibration, right? If there's painting, and I think that goes into symbology, I think that goes into sacred geometry, I think that there is a visual vibration, kind of especially like with abstract painting or abstract art, to where you expand the mind beyond the norm in order to see something different. And that would be the visual one. But so if someone's creating a language that, and when they're speaking it, you might as well just be doing the Om. Uh, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's the same kind of thing. So I would say don't judge them for whatever it is that they're doing, because why couldn't that be tapping into that higher knowledge, that higher awareness, through this light language vehicle? If they want to connect it to some place in the solar system or some place in the cosmos, there might be something to that as well too, because when you think about astrology and astronomy, and we are moving through the universe. My perception is that, and my knowledge is so thus far, is that yes, there's planetary energy involved. Yes, there is energy involved in wherever we're moving within the galaxy or the universe. um, there's energy involved in signs and symbols, so numerology. So there's all this energy that's involved in all of these things. And the more that we know more about all of them together, and just kind of, so it is kind of the convergence and the expansion thing, just even in our knowledge, even in our own expression, that this is all happening. This vibration is to really help us be able to, I think, converge all of ourselves, that are fractured and splintered and fractaled and all of that, right? And then once we can converge that, then we really have the ability to do that creator expansion kind of thing, really be able to be the master of our own energy field, and energy expression.
Yeah, I agree. And like, I guess I'll take some of that back because as I was looking at, I pulled up some examples of the writing that I've done in
Yeah,
the
I see.
past. And I don't know if you can see them.
Yeah, I can. That's great.
And so then I was looking at, the constellation, which I've always kind of, or group, I guess you could say, that I've always, what do you call that, resonated with,
Okay.
which is Arcturian light language. And there's a lot of similarities in, the characters of the writing. You know what I
That's
mean?
interesting.
So you can kind
And
of
I would be
see
curious to know, like, where was this star system at the time of your birth? And
that would be a
if
very interesting thing to look
yes,
up.
Yes, I would be very interested to know that and see if there isn't some kind of connection there as well. I think this is all just extremely fascinating. So for me, visually, okay, I see because I'm really trying to um, see how this light language or this perceptual vibration works for me. In my artistic expression, it has always my eye has always been extremely abstract in nature as far as what I see creatively and perceive creatively as art. It's very abstract. And I've also always been very into light and shadow. And that's how I see today. I mean, and this was 30 years ago, that I was doing photographic art and what my creative eye was seeing and expressing back then. And so now fast forward 30 years later, I seem to have tapped into this other visual perception ability to see in more uh, because of light and shadow, see kind of other dimensional spaces. But it is the ability to also be able to see in an abstract kind of way. So it is a kind of light language. I'm still just trying to figure out how do I share that with others, other than to tell them that they have the ability to do this as well. Um, but I guess just to maybe if I just continue to tap into um, what I'm able to do artistically and put that out there into the world, then just like light language, when somebody hears it, it kind of sparks something inside of them, a subconscious knowing of some kind, that maybe my art would visually do that for people as well.
I think so.
And that would be kind of like my way of being able to give back or expand people's awareness through that ability.
I think that's a really, really good idea. I know a lot of people are already doing this, but they're doing it, it seems like less of from an art perspective, like what you're trying to do, and more from a light language perspective. So I'd like to see that dynamic reversed and see how far you can take it, because I almost feel like presenting it as what it is for people, like right off the gate, being like, boom, this is a light language painting, like
Yeah, exactly.
perhaps like it being more like, oh, this is my painting. Oh, did you know this was light language, by the way? You know,
Mm,
uh,
yeah.
because I think it would be interesting if people who are more skeptical, you know what I'm saying, who are going to hear it right off the gate and go, oh, that's light language, that's crackpot, I don't want to look at that, versus somebody being like, oh, I really like this art piece, I can't describe, why I like it so much or what it is, it just really gets me in the feels, and you're like, oh, that's what light language is, blah blah, blah.
Mm.
you know
Yeah, very interesting. I like that, definitely. So one of the things that I also see, so we talked about, this written light language, right? And how, signs and symbols are something that is used in the construct to kind of keep us subliminally within the construct. So why couldn't these signs and symbols then also be used, and magicians and know about being able to create sigils, and those who are into magic and that kind of thing, they know the power behind sigils, creating sigils. For me, visually, I think that's elementals, is what I tap into, the elementals in nature in another dimensional space. um, so what do you think about that? Do you think that they could be kind of like the one and the same thing, symbols and elementals?
um I think, well, yeah, probably. I think I may have talked about this a bit before, I don't remember when, but about how whenever I've done psychedelics, And I've seen what people would call like entities or alien deities, right? I'm not actually seeing like some dude with 3 fingers sitting there having a conversation with me. Like, it's actually these giant, massive geometrical figures, right? And
Okay.
they move, and along with that movement, there's like a very, it reminds me of like Tuvan throat singing. So it's like a really
Interesting.
intense auditory vibration that comes along with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times, yeah, like when people say, "Oh, I took DMT and I went to a parallel universe and I talked to the aliens," that this is kind of what they are describing, perhaps.
Yeah.
Um, and so I guess in one sense, you could say that elementals, or these kind of situational deities that come around our sigils and our symbols. um
That just animate differently.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
guess that's where I get a little confused thinking, well, hmm, I don't know. I've never really thought about it like that before, because in the occult, I've always thought of it as you use a sigil to call a certain deity. Um, but it would almost make more sense in a way that drawing the sigil of whatever it is you're trying to manifest, once you draw it, it's already there. You know what
Mm.
I mean? It's not really
Indeed.
being called upon.
Indeed.
It is.
Indeed.
So that's really interesting, I think.
Sigils are a lot like schematics and electrical schematics. And we're this we are electrical vibrational beings. We live in an electrical vibrational construct. And so I think that learning how to learning this ability for light language, whatever part of light language, again, light being perception, language being vibration, however you create that within yourself, um, that basically it's our ability. It's almost like these are our gifts, part of our gifts and our abilities and our superpowers, right? Is to be able to change molecular structure and how much that fits in with particle physics as well. And how is light language and are these abilities actually doing that within the construct? And is that changing the construct itself, or is it our ability to open portals to move through other constructs, or is it um, kind of like as we redefine, as we rewrite, as we reanimate, as we
Hmm.
reinvent ourselves, are we also reinventing our space in a mathematical, physics, vibrational way? And is that the like new earth kind of concept that is often talked about? Is the fifth dimension out there somewhere, up there somewhere, or is it actually right here and we just tap into it here?
Interesting.
Mm.
Um, I'm really, when it comes to stuff like that, I'm not 100% sure. I do think though that light language is like yeah, I agree that it is a part of this whole like new earth concept. Um, but I actually think with light language we're tapping into something that's more from the original, like we're here
So
having
our
this
own Akashic
sensory
record.
experience in 3D, right? But our being comes from, nothing, nowhere, no form or definite shape. So it would make sense to me that as we're tapping into, our true being, our true selves, these sort of languages and these sort of constructs, perhaps of where we existed or originated before this, are coming into play. You know, it's almost like having like a current life memory. What would you call that? Damn, all the words are slipping me right now.
A deja vu, a current life memory.
No, like it would be like remembering, like as you're healing in this lifetime, I'm able to remember things that have happened to me when I was a little kid that
Okay.
I didn't have access to before that emotional healing had taken place.
Okay, very good. So like these different light languages could actually also be a part of healing DNA. Did we talk about that?
Not yet. I don't think so. I don't think we have yet. And I think it's healing, like, yeah, the DNA and like,
So meditation is one way that they talk about being able to you know, heal. Let's talk about healing, okay? Meditation is a healing practice, let's say. Well, why couldn't, you know, they have things like art therapy? Okay, so where you're being creator, you're putting creator energy into um, right drawing or painting or what have you. Then there's also, why couldn't this light language also be another, like we were talking about with the Om and saying mantras, you know, Om Mani Padme Hum, or you know, Om Tara Chitara Turi Soha. You know, these are mantras that are, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of years old, that work on some in some way. And that's a language right there. Yeah, it's a language that we know currently, but why couldn't these other light languages, it's just vibration. That's all language is. So why couldn't someone just make something up in order to be able to heal themselves with it? What would be wrong with that? Nothing.
precisely the idea. You know, people will say like, "Oh, you need um hold up. Ethan said something weird in the comments that remind me to get back to that. But like crap, what was I saying before that? Oh yeah, people will say that you need to like have your light language activated and you know, pay me $150 and I'll do your light language activation. And it's like,
Right.
dude, the best possible way to do it is just sit the fuck down and do it, you know, or like you were saying, it's kind of like making it up, but what we think of as like making up uh is more like tapping in, you know.
Well, right. I think that, okay, so we totally have lost childlike wonderment, you know, our ability to be creative. The programming of this construct and the indoctrination of this construct and the restrictions of compartmentalized thinking um, has really deadened a lot of these creative aspects of ourself. And um, the more pure our creative energy is, the I think the more powerful it is. And so I don't know, whatever way it takes to get there. I think that what they were talking about today about you know, if you feel, I guess, inhibited, um even just singing to yourself in the shower, okay? That would be another, you know, are you singing a song that you created and made up? Do you have those songs on your in your heart anymore, in your heart space anymore? You know, I don't know. I think that that's a great way of breaking ourselves free from our own self limitations. Um, I think that I'm really resonating with it myself. I guess I should say. I would like to be more free feel more free to express myself in whatever crazy, funny way I want to without feeling self-judgment or the judgment of others. So that's kind of, I think that that's, and then they talked about how, children certainly are more free with their creative ability until it gets deadened by responsibility. um, and so their ability to create little songs in their heads or create their own languages or, play pretend and what have you. And we definitely don't listen to our kids enough. I remember when my daughter was real little and I used to have all kinds of creator energy in me and could sit and pretend for hours, pretend in good ways, positive ways. I remember when that was dead in me. I remember thinking to myself, how come I can't sit down and play, with my daughter and just create fantasy in pretend world or whatever? How come I can't do that anymore? Like I used to be able to do it when I was a kid. And I'm happy to say that, going through all the processes that I've gone through over the past couple of years has definitely helped me get back into my creator energy and be able to express myself in that way without self-judgment. And I don't really, worry about what others think. I do it because I like to do it and because it's an expression of, it is a freedom of expression. I think that that's what light language is as well, is another ability to break through and have freedom of expression in a world that says that, we have to fit into a box that we don't fit
Damn, I agree 100% with that.
in. Right on.
I would say, yeah, that's the difference between, our authentic being and the being that we are when we come here is this being is caught up in entanglements and,
Mm,
quantum physics, where one thing that I did lifetimes ago affects me now. And it's almost like causal, you know what I'm saying? Whereas our true being or our inner child, if you want to call it that, um, is bound by no attachments.
yes. Yeah. Right. Exactly. So I really just, yeah, felt like this was a topic that needed to be talked about, that it's another, you know, I think in some ways it might be getting a bad rap out there with people who don't understand it, who, yeah, right, you're talking to alien beings, but I think we need to look beyond what it is that and how it's being expressed within individual people, but look at the concept as a whole as another vehicle towards being able to, expand our awareness overall and actually. Um, uh, really be able to use our gifts in this, in this world in a positive way.
I think so too. And one of my questions is like, well, for those who are skeptical, I'm not even sure what could make it more real. You know what I'm saying? It's the
Yeah.
sort of thing that if you don't really have the balls to try to experience it and see it for yourself, then I'm not sure that extraterrestrials are ever going to physically land boom boom down on earth, you know what I mean, and be like, hey, what's good, bitches? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um I think it's always going to be more of a telepathic sort of connection. And
And I think this is speaking of telepathic, I think this is a vehicle that can be used towards fine tuning our own telepathic, empathic abilities. Um, it's just another tool that's being offered to us in this three-dimensional experience, that again, it's opportunities. What opportunities are you going to take advantage of that are being granted you based on what your interests are, what your skill set is, what your your gifts, your intuitive gifts that you've been given, and how are you going to utilize those in this experience to keep, you know, to do your own convergence and the healing and putting back together all the fractal pieces, but then how are you going to expand that out into the universe to make this a better place for everybody? So, and sharing that with the world. So I think I'm going to leave it there. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add to the conversation?
I think that's about it for now. I'd love to get a maybe like a round table going
I think that would be great too.
at some point in the future or something.
Yeah, I would too. I would too. I would like to get people who have these different kind of perceptual, vibrational abilities, um, that could be called light language, and get, different people and see how it's working for them in their experience, and actually recognizing it as a light language expression.
I
That'd be
think that
cool.
would be super interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, well, I'm going to wrap it up there, folks. I got things I got to do. So, y'all have a great afternoon. Thank you so much, Zam, for joining me. I love, love, love our conversations. I love, love, love you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for joining me today.
I love you too, and thank you,
And
Gigi. Thank you for having me, and thanks everybody who's viewing.
yeah, and thank you, Ethan, for your comments in the chat. You're awesome. You're awesome, awesome. We got to get you on with us sometime too. And we'll do this
Oh
again
yeah.
soon. All righty. Talk to y'all
All
later.
right. Talk
Bye
to
now.
you soon.